Namaste everyone. From this episode on, the Samvada is YTF Samvada, and our topic is Praman, Shraddha, and Anvishwas. So, while discussing about various topics, we come across various issues. Like people often argue that uh, how can this be proved? If something has not been proved, how are you going to believe it? Sometimes some few of the things are not proved, and yet people believe on it. So, which one are those things which should be believed on? Which one are those things which should not be believed on? And in between, where the scientific proofs lie. This topic is all about it, and I like to introduce a bit more about the future sessions. Uh, we are planning to do few workshops through ITF on critical thinking, and thus this particular conversation will set a base for that workshop. So I'll request Prashantji to start with the basics of the topic.
Narayan. Thank you, Vidulika. So this is great to finally come under the banner of YTF, and so we are merging our efforts with Samvada and YTF as well. So I'm looking forward to collaborating further as we move along the lines of critical thinking. So today's topic is very pertinent for all of us because usually when we speak about any teaching, any philosophy, we just directly jump into the topic, but we don't analyze the ground rules. And so, what I wanted to do from as part of this conversation, very similar to the earlier one we had on Dharma, which is that first I will just pitch a few ideas. I'll start building a skeletal framework, and then we can jump right into discussions. So, जब हम philosophy की बात करते हैं, and I'm going to try to be bilingual here, but not super bilingual as well because I have to still check with our viewers to make sure that the Samvada viewers are comfortable. But nonetheless, जब हम philosophy की चर्चा करते हैं, there are usually four pillars that we think about. And the four pillars of any philosophy are ontology, metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics. So all of philosophy can be covered under these four branches. So ontology refers to what is something. So for example, if I'm holding a phone, what exactly is it? What is its substance? What underlies the components of the phone? Like, it's basically looking into analyzing the nature of reality. Metaphysics, when we speak about it, some people prefer to merge ontology and metaphysics into the same expression. But I'm only forming a distinction because when we talk about our Vedantic teachings, especially, metaphysics plays a different role. So while ontology speaks about what is the nature of something, metaphysics are the laws that underlie the laws. Or it is basically looking at what is that which is going on behind the scenes, which is not evident to us, which gives something its own structure and form and properties. So ontology, I would define it as something that is perceivable, that you're trying to understand what it is from a perceptible perspective. And metaphysics is that which is going on behind the scenes, which you cannot really speak about in concrete terms. So it is something that abstract thinkers like us, would really enjoy, metaphysics. And the third branch of philosophy is what you call epistemology. And this is really important because epistemology basically answers the question, how do you know what you know? And at first glance it sounds like a very stupid question, like how do you know what you know? But it's very important to answer this question because anytime I make a conclusion, a statement, a state of fact, come up with a hypothesis, I have to be able to prove and I have to be able to establish why my conclusions are not erroneous and that they are coming from a place of fact, not fiction. And so epistemology is all about exploring the nature of knowledge. It is knowledge that is used to describe ontology, but until the nature of knowledge is understood, ontology also cannot take place. So I cannot tell what something is until I can tell you how I know what it is. So that is epistemology. And the fourth branch of philosophy is ethics. So how do you act in the world? Now, if we talk about a world that is inert, it's only jada, there are no conscious beings, then we don't have to worry about ethics. We just need to worry about ontology, metaphysics, and epistemology. But because we live in a world with conscious creatures, with people with certain feelings, aspirations, emotions, desires, so on and so forth, we have to place ourselves in a position where we are able to orient ourselves in a way that is beneficial to all, including ourselves. So we are trying to maximize the good of the world. And all of these considerations come under ethics. But today we'll not be discussing ethics or ontology or metaphysics, but we'll be focused more on epistemology, which is how do you know what you know. Now, one of my concerns with many traditional teachers of Sanatana Dharma, particularly, is that they don't begin with this subject. They'll just get right into the teaching, but they'll not really explain to students how you can state something as a fact and how it is that you're walking away with your understanding, knowing that it is true and it is not just a belief. So now we'll be discussing the nature of knowledge. So knowledge takes place when three things are aligned. तीन चीज साथ में होनी चाहिए ज्ञान के लिए. One is that you need to have the subject. I am a subject. You are a subject. We are conscious beings. Second is you need to have an object, like my phone, for instance. And the third is that when the subject and the object come together, there has to be a means of knowledge, which is what you call a pramana. So over here, in order to perceive my phone, the means of knowledge used is the sense of sight. And so the pramata is the subject, the prameya is the object, and the pramana is the means of knowledge. And so just a slight warning to our listeners that we'll get a little bit into Sanskrit territory because many of these words don't have a direct translation. And so we have to try to stick as far as possible to the closest expressions. So now we'll get into what are the traditional pramanas that we accept. So there are 6 traditionally accepted pramanas. First is what you call pratyaksha pramana. Pratyaksha matlab hota hai ki direct. It is there, it's right in front of you, it is perceptible. So the pratyaksha pramana itself is divided into 5 categories. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. So Shabda is the sense of hearing, Sparsha is a sense of touch, Rupa is a sense of sight, Rasa is a sense of smell, and Gandha is, Rasa is a taste, and Gandha is a sense of smell. And these 5 pramanas put together, in our Shastra, we also call them the Jnanendriyas. And they are also called the Moola Pramanas, the primary means of knowledge. So the way to poetically look into it is that this is our way to look into the world through these 5 windows. They are our window into the world. And everything that you know is only known through these 5 senses. There is no other, well, let's not get into the 6th sense right now. Let's keep it simple. But for all intents and purposes, these are the 5 senses that we have. So any thoughts on this before we proceed, or should I continue building on? Oh, sorry, you're muted, Vidalika.
Okay, yes, sorry. So I think you should continue because I find this interesting and I'm processing things.
Okay, no problem. So when we spoke about the 5 sense organs or the pratiksha pramanas, these pramanas, I want to make careful note that they are referring to the sukshma indriyas. They're not referring to the golakams. So for example, I'm not referring to my nose when I speak of smell because my nose is a physical object. My eyes are physical objects, my ears are physical objects. But it is the sukshma jnanendriya that underlies it, that sits behind it, that is responsible for picking up these sensory perceptions. So it is the sukshma, not the sthula, that we are speaking about. Now, that we've covered the Moola Pramanas, we're going to start building into one complicated layer. You have the secondary Pramanas also. These were the primary Pramanas. So the first of the secondary Pramanas we accept is called Anuman. So Anuman is translated roughly as inference. You're arriving at a certain inference based on a set of observations that you make. So one example of Anumana would be, let's say you are walking down on the road and you see that there is smoke rising from the mountain. And so your inference is going to be very obvious that where there is smoke, there is fire. And so your inference is because you've seen the smoke here is called the sadhana, or it is also called the linga. Linga is a sign, and a sign indicates something that it is a sign of. So the smoke is the linga, and the sadhya, which is what you're trying to conclude from it, is the fire. And so there is an invariable concomitance. Isko bolte invariable concomitance in technical terms, which means ki you can infer smoke from fire. I'm sorry, you can infer fire from smoke, but not the other way around. Because you can have fire without any smoke also. Like हमारे gas घर पे जब चलाते हैं, but you cannot have smoke without fire.
Right.
And so Anumana is always one directional. That is very important to note. And sometimes people make logical errors by inferring it the other way also.
Right.
Now the second secondary pramana is what you call arthapatti. So this means ki you are drawing multiple inferences. So let's take today's example. Let's say, Viduleka has gone to Anugrah ji's place,
Hmm.
and she goes there every day to, talk about Batman for some reason. And every day Anugrah ji will take her weight on a weighing scale, and she'll be the same weight every single day, but she doesn't eat any food there. She goes back home.
Hmm.
So then the double inference drawn is that first, in order to maintain weight, you need to eat food. And the
Right.
second is that because she doesn't eat at my place, she must be eating at her own place or somewhere else. And so
Right.
this is what you call arthapatti. Now there is no way in which he is seeing these things happen, but yet he is drawing these multiple inferences based on the data points that he's collected from. So isko bolte hain arthapatti. That's number two of the secondary pramana, or it's number three of the list of pramanas. So
Hmm.
again, the first was pratiksha, anumana, arthapatti.
Hmm.
Now the fourth is called upama. So not the upama that we eat, but it's more like comparison.
Right.
So like for example, my father's name is Anup. So Anup means
Hmm.
incomparable, but here upama means you're referring to comparison.
Yes.
So that way, let's say Vidulika has not visited the US yet,
Hmm.
but she knows what a bull looks like because she's seen many bulls.
Hmm.
And then I tell her that Vidulika, there's a creature in the US called a bison.
Hmm.
And she's like, okay, how does it look? So I tell her, okay, imagine that there's a bull.
Hmm.
And now imagine that there's a lot of shaggy hair all over it. And so what she's doing now is that she is taking the image of a bull and she is taking the image of a bison. I'm sorry, of a lot of shaggy hair. And वो उसका अध्यास कर रही है उसके ऊपर. There's a superimposition taking place. Now when she comes to the US and I take her to the national parks over here, she'll point out of the window and say, oh look, there's a bison. Because she'll recognize a bison because of that comparison that is created. So that means that you can also recognize something and have knowledge of it without seeing it based on two facts that you have seen, which can be superimposed together.
Hmm.
So this upama is dependent upon the adhyasa of two facts. It's a conglomerate complex.
Hmm.
Now there's another, the fifth one is what you call anupalabdhi. So
Hmm.
upalabdhi matlab availability.
Right.
Anupalabdhi is the non-availability of cognition. So for example, I say there is a pot in my hand. Now what's happening is that first of all, you see my hand, you visualize that there's a pot in your head, and that absence of the cognition of the pot, which is not in my hand, gets inferred as the absence of the pot.
Hmm.
Now this
Right.
is actually a multiple step process and we do it immediately because we've grown up with
That-
this way of thinking.
Yes.
But when I said there's a pot in my hand, you did visualize for a split second a pot, and then you saw there's no pot, and so you drew its absence. Now somebody may wonder that this is such a stupid thing, like who needs this kind of means of knowledge, but it is very powerful because today when you do say medical testing, you're testing
Hmm.
somebody's blood samples for disease or whatever.
Hmm.
What you are actually doing is anupalabdhi process, which is you're testing for the absence of certain indications,
Hmm.
right? For example, like the sugar level will be within a range. If it is not there, then you conclude that no, you're not diabetic. Or if you're testing for cancer cells, or if you're testing for anything, this anupalabdhi process is very important in the medical field for medical diagnosis.
Yeah.
Then, of course, you might be familiar with the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, and so they smash these particles at very high velocities together, and then they have a hypothesis. It's called the standard model of quantum physics, and within that standard model they have predicted that certain not elements but certain subatomic particles will be discovered based on this model. And what they do is they look into that whole vacuum chamber, and they find that these elements are there or they're not there. And
Hmm.
based on that conclusion, they will either verify that model or they will reject that model and they will update the model. So a few years back, you might have made a note of this Higgs boson that was
Yes.
discovered. Sorry, one second. So the Higgs boson that was discovered, it was actually based on a hypothesis they created, and they discovered it as well as part of their experiments.
Right.
But if they had not discovered it, then this would be Anupalabdhi. Now,
Right.
speaking of Andhavishwas, our good friend Jaggi Vasudevji, he went on a talk show to speak about the Higgs boson, which he had no idea about. So these are things that we have to avoid because if it's not in your expertise, let somebody else handle it.
Yes. Right.
So sorry, I didn't mean to be so critical, but मन में आया तो. So okay, now let's say we've covered the list of pramanas that
Hmm.
everybody usually accepts. Most
Hmm.
people with common sense accept these pramanas. Now I say most people because there are actually some traditions which do not accept all of the pramanas. For example, हमारे जो चारों का friend थे, they did not accept any of the secondary pramanas. I believe they did not accept Anumana also. And
Okay.
so I used to joke with one of my friends that that's why they went extinct, Charvakas, because they did not infer the fire from the smoke and they all got burned to death. But then that way there are certain other sampradayas and traditions which do not accept all of these five pramanas. They accept them in different orders. Some don't accept Anupalabdhi, so on and so forth. It makes common sense uh, to accept all of these because each of these pramanas have certain applicability. Now, my question is what pramana do I use, suppose, to ask you how you're feeling right now? Can I use any of these pramanas to know how you feel?
I think so. It will just be whatever I tell you, you have to believe on.
Yes, yes. And so that is actually the sixth pramana that we accept. It's called Shabda pramana. And so let's say, you express that you're hungry. I have no way of knowing it until you tell me you're hungry. Or you tell me that, oh, today, you had a great day. I have no way of knowing that. You tell me your favorite food is dosa. I don't know that. I take what you say at face value. But now,
Right.
a pramana, when it's a Shabda pramana, it it cannot be a pramana if it is not a reliable statement. So
Right.
therefore, in order for something to be a pramana, the person must be a person of integrity. The person, must be speaking from a place of truth and from a place of knowledge. Now, sometimes you may think that you're speaking the truth, but you may be ignorant about it yourself, and you may be expressing it very honestly and sincerely, and yet it is untrue. So
Yes, right.
such statements cannot be considered pramana. For a statement to be considered as Shabda pramana, what you say has to be true. It has to be true to the fact. Okay, so this is what you refer to as Shabda Pramana. Now, one may wonder that, okay, chalo, we are talking about Pratyaksha Pramana. If you recall, there was a word called Shabda, Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha. Shabda is already one of the Pratyaksha Pramanas. Then why am I assigning this Shabda a new category? Now,
No, I get because the last Shabda Pramana is like, those gazetted officers who sign the papers and say that, okay, this person has been vaccinated, this person is this year's old, something like that. So it is like that because those people have been given the authority to do that. You cannot question it.
Right,
You have to believe on it.
right. You have no choice.
Last one is that. Well, the first one is whatever.
Jo bhi sound that fall into our ears or whatever.
It's about sound. For example, a bomb blast, a dog barking, and anything like that.
Dog barking makes sense at your place. So, this is Shabda Pramana. Now, there's a second reason why we are giving it a separate category.
Mhm.
Reflect on this conversation we are having right now. Every time you speak a sentence and every time I speak a sentence, what's happening is that we are cognizing only one sound at a time, and it's a string of sounds that create that sentence.
Right.
But what we are doing is we are not concluding the meaning of the sentence until the very last word. If you think about it, like
Right.
suppose I just say even as I speak right now very slowly. Suppose I'm making a statement, you have no idea what I'm about to say until the last thing that I've said.
Right.
So this is the theory in our Indian Vedic grammar system. It's called sphota, which is like an explosion, because the meaning takes place only at the end of what is spoken, not at the beginning. See, there's this whole thing about the sum of the parts is less than the whole.
Yes.
So if you take the individual parts together, every single word, they will not make any meaning. You cannot infer any meaning from the individual words. Only when the words are contextualized as a full vakya, then the meaning of that vakya comes out.
Right.
Otherwise, it's very evident and yet it's very difficult to explain, but you can see what I mean. And therefore, Shabda
I
Pramana
understand.
is accorded a special status only because of this reason, that in order for there's a temporal component to it, that the words have to be stringed through the passage of time, then it makes sense. And therefore, Shabda Pramana is relevant. And this is very unique as a Pramana. Now, when we speak about.
And that's how the most of the sorry.
Go ahead.
I was saying that that's how most of the court hearings work.
Yes.
Gawa and all those things because they believe on it. It is if it is in a legal process till now, then it has to be believed on.
Yes. And it has some functional value because history has taught us that this works. Our entire
Yes, and
society is
again,
based on conversations.
right, and again there are ways to verify whether the person is whatever he's saying is completely true or not.
Right. So this is actually looking at a slightly different aspect than that.
Mhm,
So if one pramana does not need verification of
mhm,
through other pramanas,
mhm,
and the reason for this is, let's say, how can I verify that you are truly hungry? If you've made that
mhm,
statement, there's no way for me to verify it.
mhm,
How can I truly verify it when you tell me that I feel happy today? I can't
mhm.
verify it.
Right.
So the only those statements which is unverifiable by any other pramanas is a pramana, and that topic we are just about to come to right now. So see,
Mhm.
this is what makes the conversation so much fun because you are already one step ahead.
Yes.
So now let's say we talked about Shabda Pramana, that
Mhm,
the meaning takes place as though as an explosion at the end of the statement, but not at the beginning.
mhm.
The meaning is never inferred part by part, it's inferred as a whole. The entire sentence gives you a sense of something. It explodes in front of your face and you know what it means. Now, how do I infer uh, or what pramana do I use to figure out ki there is something called karma, there's something called moksha, there's a place called swarga, there's some being called Indra, Varuna, Agni, all of these different
Right.
celestials. And so for that also, we don't have any pramana that we can use. You can't use
Mhm,
pratyaksha pramana. You can't use anuman, arthapati, upama, and anupalabdhi. So within Shabda Pramana, there is a subset called Shruti Pramana. And this is also what you will refer to as a Vedvakya. So the Shruti Pramana is again reliable, not verifiable, but veritable statements of uh, people of integrity, people with a semblance of truth value to them, which are the rishis.
mhm.
So this we spoke about once also earlier. I think okay, how we'll talk about how we can say that the rishis speak the truth, Vishwamitra
Right.
ke context mein.
Yes.
And so the thing is that you accord a sense of respect to them. Today, let's say you're going down a dark street
Mhm,
and you were lost in a strange city and you meet your friend.
mhm,
Let's say you meet Ashutosh ji in the street and he's like, "अरे विदुर क्या तुम यहाँ क्या कर रही हो?" You're like, "अरे मैं भटक गई, I don't know which way to go." Then he'll point you in that dark street. Then go down that road, and then on the next street you'll find your house. Okay. Now your first skeptical nature will be like, wait, that's a very dark street. What if there's some gunda mawali over there?
right.
But because it came from a trusted source,
Hmm.
you will accept what you see. You
Yes.
will go down that path. Now, if Ashutosh ji can be trusted, the rishis can be trusted now. Right?
Yes.
So they are a trustworthy source because they are veritable. They are niswartha. They have certain qualities to them. They are well respected. All of these things, and therefore, they're okay. That's one point. Second point is, if I make a statement, I'm
Mhm,
making that statement through the limitations of my mind and the
hmm.
limitations of my buddhi and everything put together. And my buddhi can be defective also. I could go into the territory of kutarka. Maybe I'm a
Right.
stupid person.
Hmm.
So therefore, what I say, you can maybe accept with a little bit of skepticism, thoda sa.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you'll still take it as a working conclusion. But in the case of the rishis, they have not authored the Vedas.
Hmm.
Because Vedas are called apaurushaya.
Right.
If I author something, even if I'm writing a book,
Hmm.
there will be many flaws in that.
Hmm.
Guaranteed. Yesterday you posted about this Devdak Patnaik. Okay,
Right.
our Mahatma, Mahagnani, Avatar Babaji Devdak Patnaik. His book has more flaws than facts.
Exactly.
But he has no facts in his head basically. He just has imagination. That's it, and not very sound imagination also.
I won't blame him because he himself calls it myth. So it is not
Yeah,
supposed to be true from his own side. So let him
right.
be.
Self goal. So like that means that anything that you write, I write, whatever, even the things that we say, suppose in the Samvada
Hmm.
or anywhere else, it is subject to verification. We leave it up to the judgment of people to verify that we are saying the truth or we are making no sense at all.
Mhm.
But when the Vedas are Aparoshiya, is because they are not authored by the rishis. The rishis are called mantra drashtas.
Hmm.
They have divined the visions of the mantras that are already virajman in a
Yes.
place called Surya Mandal or Hiranyagarbha. And from
Hmm.
there, through the deep meditation, so let's all get into the process, but they are able to see the mantras as they are, and they only pass it on as a matter of fact. They don't
Hmm.
add any color to it. खुद का
Right.
मन का जो भी, they don't add to it. So therefore, that degree of veritability goes up substantially. Okay, and so that is where we get these teachings of karma, moksha, swarga, all of these things from the teachings of the Vedas, which are handed to us by the rishis, not
Hmm.
given by them, but handed to us. That's a difference. Now, this uh, should we take a pause here and discuss anything, or proceed to what do you say?
I'm just thinking that we need another session, another episode in the same series about Tark and Kutark,
Yes,
because again, this is setting up a base for that,
we could. You're just
and
giving more
it's
ideas now, so very
interesting.
happy. So then let's connect to this topic of what do you call it, Shraddha,
Hmm.
and see how it tries to pramana. So again, just to give you a recap, pramana is
Mhm.
a means of knowledge. There are 6 means of knowledge.
Hmm.
Pratyaksha, which is Sabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha.
Hmm.
Anumana, which is inference. Arthapatti can also be called presumption, which is a multiple sets of inferences.
Right.
Upama is knowledge through comparison by doing adhyasa of 2 or more facts together.
Hmm.
Anupalabdhi is the recognition of the non-cognition of something through its absence.
Hmm.
And finally, you have Shabda Pramana as a separate Pramana itself, which is veritable statements from reliable, trustworthy sources.
Hmm.
And a subset of Shabda is Shruti Pramana.
Hmm.
And that allows us to infer things such as, like, how are you feeling? Shabda Pramana. Gayatri Mantra, Shruti Pramana, which is subset of this. Now, there's a very bold statement that I'm going to make, which is that many times the doubt might occur to you, I'm sure it has, that see,
Mhm.
in all of these other pramanas, I logically walk them through.
Hmm.
But for Shabda Pramana, it seems Shraddha is required.
Right.
You'll be like, see, I need to believe. I need to
Hmm.
add some, level of faith in that.
Hmm.
And what I'm going to say is Shraddha is required for all pramanas, not just one. Okay. Now, the reason Shraddha is required for everything is let's talk about knowledge taking place. Earlier, I said that when the pramana, the prameya and the pramata come together, knowledge
Hmm.
takes place. This is a fact.
Hmm.
But there is one more component. Knowledge cannot take place until you accept it.
Right. Exactly.
So let's say there is a set of, there's a Venn diagram because you're a visual person and I'm a visual person. One circle is the set of all truth values.
Mhm.
The second circle which overlaps it, I don't know, I'm not doing this, but the second circle which overlaps it is basically all the truth values that are accepted. Okay.
Okay.
And the intersection is knowledge.
Hmm.
Suppose there is a fact that the sky is blue, but you say, "Ki, nahi, nahi, I don't accept it," then that will never be known to you as knowledge. Suppose there's a fact that there is truly an animal called a bison,
Hmm.
but you're like, "Nahi, nahi, I don't want to accept it. It's not knowledge to you."
Hmm.
Fact only becomes knowledge when it is accepted consciously by the individual.
Exactly.
Or same way, these Nastics. Suppose you say,
Hmm.
okay, there is something called karma.
Hmm.
Suppose you go and step on a cockroach and you kill it just for fun.
Right.
There is a karma associated with it. Yeah, I don't accept it. Then it's not
Hmm.
knowledge to you. But if you have knowledge, you have the power to transform your behavior also. Then you will
Exactly.
know, okay, I should not go and kill something just for fun, out
Hmm.
of just my amusement.
Hmm.
So okay, so therefore, for something to be known to you, it has to be true, and that truth value of whatever that thing is that you're doing must be accepted. This is
Okay.
knowledge.
I want to add something to it.
Mhm.
I was discussing this with one of the speakers from YTC.
Mhm.
So he asked what is knowledge, and I answered it in a different way. For example, you are taught multiplication when you are like 3 or 4 in class third or fourth, something like that.
Mhm.
You just learn how to do it. You have not internalized it. For example, if you are asked to just a second, if you are asked to do multiplication when you are in class third or fourth, you do it systematically. You go through all the steps and do it. But now, when I have learned it for more than 15 years, I don't have to go through each of the steps because I have internalized all of its essence. I know what's going on behind. I don't have to follow a path. So now it's knowledge. Earlier also I had accepted it, but I don't define it as knowledge until I have internalized it. And I have one joke about it. I often say this to my father that uh, I learn the subjects I have read 1 year after I have passed that earlier class. Means I if I passed class ninth in 2010, then by the end of 2011, I may understand all of the things which I had studied in class 9.
Yes.
So now I can do anything with it. I can play with it. But in class 9, I would have only be able to uh, solve the questions, something like that. I would not have been able to play with it or make better questions or solve new kind of problems related to the same topic.
Yes. No,
So
that's very true.
hmm.
Can I add a couple of layers to that?
Yes, sure.
So suppose somebody's you memorized a multiplication table. Let's say 11 times 5. So you know it's 55, right? And you just memorize it. You don't know what it really means. What's going on behind the scenes, as you said. It's 11 plus 11 plus 11 plus 11 5 times. That's what's going on. And then for that multiplication to be known, you need to know additive rules. For division to be known, you need to know additive and subtractive rules and multiplication rules, all of these things. So there's a krama involved over there. But at the same time, suppose there's a person in third standard. I think, yeah, that's when you learn multiplication. And you ask that person, what is 11 times 5? And that person says 55 because there's a multiplication table that he's memorized.
Right.
I would still say that 55 is knowledge. But here's the difference between your knowledge today and your knowledge when you were in third standard. In third standard, you only knew that one conclusion, which is knowledge of that final conclusion. Today, you know the entire chain of conclusions that lead up to that conclusion. So you have knowledge of each individual component as well, whereas then you had knowledge of only one component. So I would not say that the knowledge is not there, except that the knowledge was restricted and limited only to what you were trying to solve. And today you have knowledge of the process. Okay, so that's how knowledge essentially takes place. Now, the argument that I was making is that knowledge is required for all of the pramanas, not just Shabda. So then the obvious question is, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. Shraddha is required for all the pramanas. And so, like, what about your Pancha Jnanendriyas? Like, what, do you require Shraddha for that as well?
Yes, means let me think about the examples once because I think that will make me understand it better. When we talk about the Jnanendriya, I have to believe that if I touch something and my sense of touch is working well, and that's why I can feel that whether it is cold or soft or whatever. Because we have belief on our five sense organs, that's why things like optical illusions exist, right?
Yes.
Because we are interpreting something from whatever we are seeing. We are trying to relate it to whatever we have seen till that point of time. And that's why the illusion is there.
Exactly. And the reason today you touch something and it's hot, you immediately move your hand away, responsiveness to stimuli. You've learned to trust it, but at some point you would not have as an infant. Like, Ambika would have to have touched something for a significant amount of time to know when she was very young, not now. That, oh, this is hot and this is not good and I don't want to do it again. So next time she'll not touch it for that long.
Yes.
Now, if when she's having a bath, if it's hot, she'll be like, garam che. It's like hot, and then immediately I'll know, okay, I need to turn it down a little bit. So let's take, on that note of, think of childhood development also. Children, the first sense that develops is a sense of hearing and touch. Okay. So when they are in the mother's womb, they can't see anything. It's all dark. So their eyes have not developed properly. And they hear everything. That's why, you know, जब गर्भावस्था में होते हैं तो you're supposed to listen to mantras, you're supposed to speak to the baby, you're supposed to make the baby feel very comfortable, all of these things, you know, like have regular conversations and all, it's encouraged. And so that when the baby comes out, more than anybody else's voice, it recognizes the mother's voice first. And so the baby does not recognize the mother by sight. Suppose a newborn infant, like let's say 1 day old, sees the mother, it doesn't have a concept of seeing the mother, doesn't know who the mother looks like. But
And 1 day old babies do not have developed eyesight.
They don't even have developed eyes, first of all. It happens after a few weeks.
Lights and black and white or something like that.
But let's say, you know, even a couple of weeks, in fact, like they can't see beyond 6 feet in the first couple of weeks also. Then their length of sight increases, the amount of that they're able to see. So their sight develops later, and only when the sense of sight has developed do they begin to rely upon it. And that also, they don't rely upon it to start with. They rely upon it only when it has led to certain useful conclusions for them.
Right.
So, like, let's say, you know, after a few weeks when the baby sees the mother, it learns to associate the voice of the familiar mother with the face of the mother.
Right.
And so that association of how my mother looks also is formed only later. But it's first that, okay, this is what my mother sounds like, and this is what my mother feels like, because the mother's hug and all will be very unique. Everybody's touch to the baby will be very unique. And that's why it is suggested that different people touch the baby, you know, they'll pet the baby, they'll caress the baby, they'll hug it, because the baby will learn to recognize everyone's touch. And you know, these days, like, children are actually touch deprived. Like, there's a whole. Sorry.
I am saying that I used to think that it is more about smell.
Smell also.
Okay.
Everything, like all of these things, but eyes later. And you know, there's this whole theory about like babies being touch deprived in infancy. And you know, and the more you touch them, the more you caress them, the more self-confident and you know, emotionally sound they grow up to be. So all of these theories are there. But you know, coming back to the point is key, even in your pratiksha pramana, shraddha has to be developed. It doesn't come immediately. Okay, then what about in the secondary pramanas? Let's take the example of Anuman. When I say there is smoke, there is fire, I need to have seen that conclusion before once at least, before I can infer it. If I have never ever experienced fire alongside smoke, the next time I can never identify that concomitance between the two. So only when I've seen it once, then I develop Shraddha in it, and then I can use it as a toolkit.
Right.
Same thing with Adhyapati. When you play peekaboo with a baby, like, you know, you cover your face this way, and you're gone, and then you're back, and you're gone, and you're back. The only reason this works is because they don't draw those multiple inferences to understand that your hands are connected to your torso, your arms are connected to torso, your head is also connected to torso. Then therefore, if you cover your head, it doesn't mean your head has disappeared. It's just been hidden. It's not disappeared. And so then they'll draw this correlation only later on, but they don't know that they're doing it. Today, peekaboo doesn't work with her. It used to work when she was very young.
Yes.
So therefore, every single pramana requires a little bit of Shraddha. And not only that, but when it starts to reward you with the fruits of knowledge, you start using it more and more.
Yes.
This is no different for the Vedas. So what is Shraddha? Now let us understand that in a technical sense. So Shraddha is basically, my Guruji explains it in a simple way. He says it is trust pending understanding. That means that I suspend my judgment until I understand what is said. I do not start by rejecting it.
Right.
But the moment I suspend my judgment to begin with, I listen to what is said. I try to make myself available to what is expressed.
Exactly.
And then I try to understand that what the other person is saying, that person is a good player, not a bad player. In the sense that that person, what he or she is saying, is not coming from a place of falsehood. It is my responsibility to first try to understand. Then, after you understand, even if you disagree with it, that is okay. But you must give the other person the opportunity, or the Shastra the opportunity, or the Guru the opportunity to express fully what is being said without prejudgment.
Right.
So if you come walking in with a conclusion that whatever you're saying is wrong, then you'll never learn.
Yes.
So this is what he says. Like he never translated Shraddha as belief or faith. Faith matlab ki I'll always have to accept it on faith basis. I'll never understand it. He says trust pending understanding. That it's coming from a reliable place. Try to understand. If you don't understand, reject it.
Right.
Or even better, if you don't understand, try to ask questions. And if you still don't understand, then reject it.
Yes.
So that is the whole process of Shravanam, Mananam, Nidrasana and all that, which you are, I'm sure, familiar with. So therefore, Shraddha is needed in this place also. Now, let's see, what else did I have? Okay, one more thing. A pramana has two lakshanas. It is
Okay.
anadhikata and
Hmm.
phalavat.
Hmm.
Phalavat matlab ki uska kuch upyog hota hai. It is of some use to you. Some utility is there. If a pramana has no utility, you don't require it.
Hmm.
If my eyes, they are perceiving form and color. अगर
Hmm.
मुझे form और color से मतलब नहीं, तो I don't need eyes. But obviously we require it.
Hmm.
You require a sense of smell because it makes life richer and it gives you not just that. I mean, that's an aesthetic sense, but it
Yes.
also allows you to have a second window into the world and a third window and a fourth window. And you're perceiving the world in different ways.
Hmm.
So that is phalavat. This is not questionable. So we accept. Okay, the next thing is anadhigata. This is important.
Hmm.
Let's take a pushpam.
Hmm.
उसका कोई रंग होता है, उसका कोई रूप होता है.
Hmm.
You are able to see the form and the color of the flower with your eyes.
Hmm.
I'm saying eyes, but what I actually means is sense of sight. Because you
Yes.
can have eyes, but you could still be blind, right? So, whenever I use the word eyes or nose or whatever, I'm actually referring to the sukshma indriyas, not the sthula golakam.
Hmm.
Now, the flower can be smelt. If it's a rose, it has a familiar scent. Um, a flower can be touched. It has a certain texture. The petal has a texture. And so the same object, excuse me, is making itself available through different senses. And you're picking
Right.
up a different attribute of the object through the different senses. Now, each of these senses um, do not contradict each other. They give you a fuller picture of the object. They give you a
Right.
more complete picture, but they don't overlap.
Hmm.
I can't hear with my eyes, or I can't
Right.
see with my nose, right?
Hmm.
That way. So this is what is called anadhigata. If something has to be called a pramana, it
Hmm.
cannot be made available by any other means of knowledge. That has to have exclusivity over that subject matter. My eyes are the only pramana for form and color. There's no other pramana.
Hmm.
My ears are the only pramana for sound. There's no other pramana. So therefore, for something to be a pramana, it has to have exclusive domain over that subject matter. Okay, this is what you call anadhigata.
Right.
Suppose there were overlaps. Like again, suppose there were Venn diagrams in pramanas,
Hmm.
that eyes could partially hear and ears could partially see and all, it would actually lead to a lot of confusion because then you wouldn't know which one to accept. Suppose there's a contradiction between the two.
If one of them is not working properly, then it will cause a great confusion.
Right, exactly. And so there cannot be any overlaps. They are distinct circles.
Hmm.
The entire population is only in one, it's not shared across two. Okay, so this is anadhigata. And this leads us to the concept of pramana kop. Pramana kop ka matlab krodh, anger. And
Hmm.
the Shastra says you should not earn the anger of one pramana with another pramana. It's a poetic way of saying कि सब अपना अपना उसका खुद का मालिक है.
Okay.
If one pramana interferes with the other, it will get angry. It's a way of putting it.
This sounds very good.
Yeah, it sounds poetic, no?
Yes.
So okay. So this brings us to the connection of Shraddha and Pramana.
Hmm.
Any statements here or discussions? Then we have one more topic, and then we can go full on into discussion.
No. I'm thinking that when in our usual discussions, for example, people talk about scientific proofs, all those things which I mentioned in the introduction. Most of them lie in the third category, right?
They all
So
lie in
yes,
the secondary Pramana category. Yes.
secondary pramana. And what was the third one? I'm bad with remembering the
Hmm.
terminology.
So first Pramana we looked at was Pratyaksha. That's called
Yes.
Moola Pramana because every other Pramana works only because of Pratyaksha.
Yes.
Second was Anumana.
Hmm.
So science will use Anumana. Third is
Okay.
Arthapatti. Science will also use Arthapatti, presumption.
We-
Hypothesis building is presumption.
Hmm.
Fourth is, no, sorry, I'm sorry. Hypothesis testing is actually Anupalabdhi. You have something like null hypothesis in statistics, for
Yes,
example,
yes,
right?
yes.
And then you have to prove it. So all of
That
these
is
things, it's Anupalabdhi,
hmm.
Upama. Now, why do I say Upama? Let's take an example for each of these scientifically. That will
Yes,
be
that
useful.
will be easier for even me to understand.
Huh. So Anumana is to very clear ki where there's smoke, there's fire. And so therefore, what things that you cannot see can be inferred through the linga.
For
Sadhya,
example, we use certain kind of indicators during chemical testing.
litmus test. There you go. That's Anumana, right?
Yes,
So if the thing turns red, it's acidic.
yes.
Now, the second is called Arthapati. Again,
Hmm.
it's like multiple step inferences. So sometimes when you have a chemical experiment, you'll
Hmm.
have multiple steps, right? So you'll have that titration thing, and then
Yes.
this much you do, then you do this, then you do this, then this will happen, and so on and so forth. So
For
multiple
all getting
inferences. Ha. Then the third is Upamana.
hmm.
Upamana, well, that's fourth in the list.
Yes.
So Upamana means comparison. So let's
Hmm.
say you have a periodic table.
Hmm.
Suppose you have the halides, or you have the group of metals and you have the group of non-metals, right?
Hmm.
Or you have the group of acids versus a group of bases. All of these things, like more acidic would be like to the extreme, like chlorine and
Yes.
fluorine and all of these things. They would have more acidic component to it, or oxidizers you can put it, or reductors and whatever, right? So that way you can say, okay, if fluorine has this property,
Hmm.
and because just below, no, I'm sorry, just above chlorine is fluorine with a atomic number of 9, I think it's
Hmm.
9, then they share certain properties because they fall in the same category. Same way I can say sodium and calcium like share certain properties because they are around the same region. And then I
Right.
can say carbon, today we have this whole discussion about different types of life forms. And so we say
Right.
there's carbon life form, there's silicon based life form, possibly could be there in alien life. So why do we come to that inference? Why do scientists say that maybe we should look for silicon based life form? Because
Again.
silicon comes right under carbon in the periodic table. So this is again Upamana. That means that you can draw certain correlations and comparisons. It's like in all correlations also when you talk about it is Upamana in some sense. Then the next one is Anupalabdhi, which is knowledge
Hmm.
of the absence of knowledge through the absence of cognition, which we spoke about that, okay, if you
Hmm.
do not find a particle in the collider, that's Anupalabdhi. If you do
Hmm.
not find a certain lipid or certain cancer cell in your blood sample, that's Anupalabdhi. So it is
Hmm.
helping us negate certain things. So it is used for medical testing. It is used for scientific hypothesis nullification. It's used for null hypothesis in statistics that way.
Hmm.
So every single possible domain of science that you can think about comes only under all of these. There's
Right.
nothing outside of it.
Right.
Hmm. And that's why we say that even okay, so now that fun part comes, right? Ki, oh, many people say Vedas are scientific. If
Hmm.
Vedas are scientific, go study a science text. We don't need the Vedas, they're kachra. If Vedas can become arrived at through science, then why do you need the Shastra at all? You don't need to go to a
Exactly.
guru. Go to a school. But because the Vedas offer something distinct, Pramanakopa, they don't
Hmm.
overlap.
Hmm.
That is why you need the Vedas. I can't understand how to build a rocket ship if I study the Yajurveda.
Hmm.
I need to go to aeronautical engineering.
Hmm.
That way, I can't understand how karma works if I go study civil engineering, right? In fact,
Right.
even the word karma, it comes from the Vedas only. Na? Later on, you'll say, oh, this makes sense, cause and effect, and this and that. That makes sense. No, it doesn't. If you never heard of the word before, how can you know that it's true? If you
Right.
never heard of moksha, you never heard of swarga, you don't know these things. So therefore, they are distinct. So what my Guruji also says is that Vedas are not scientific,
Hmm.
nor are they unscientific. Because if
Again.
they were unscientific, means they can be disproved by science.
No, if we are saying again the set theory thing, if
Hmm.
we are saying that it's scientific, then the whole Vedas are under science, inside the science circle.
Hmm.
But actually, these are Vedas and this is science. They are overlapping somewhere.
They don't
There,
overlap.
sorry.
They don't overlap.
Okay, they don't overlap.
They don't.
Okay,
Because,
so maybe my understanding is also a little bit odd.
no, no, no. Okay, so then I need to add one more layer to this. Good point. You may find certain statements, suppose in the Vedas, which may seem scientifically true. Suppose those statements are not pramana vakyas. They are called anuvada. Anuvada matlab restatements. It means
Okay.
they are to be seen as I won't use the word redundant, but you can say they are a repetition of what is already known. Okay, those
Yes.
statements do not come under the pramana. Suppose
Okay.
Vedas say, chalo, let's say, it says there's a benefit to waking up at a certain time,
Hmm.
and there's a benefit to offering argyam to Surya Devata, and all of these things. And then you can see there are certain benefits that come to it scientifically also.
Hmm.
You can say that, chalo, it's good for your health. It keeps your circadian rhythm going.
Hmm.
It maintains your sleep schedule, this, that, and all. You can say those things. Then that becomes anuvada.
Hmm.
The benefit of the Veda, which is not the Anuvada part, is that chalo, you offer argya and all, there's a fitness component to it, to your health.
Hmm. Hmm.
But there is also what you call a purva component to it.
Right.
Or that is what you call uh, punya karmas associated with it. That
Hmm.
means when I offer something to Devta, I
Hmm.
also get an associated punya karma that science cannot
Hmm.
speak about.
Right.
So, you had spoken about this purification of the environment at some point, no, with performing yajna, something you had spoken once. That is not the purpose of the Vedas, it is a side benefit. So the
Right.
side benefits which are scientific are not the domain of the Vedas, they are just side benefits.
Okay.
Hmm.
I get it.
So another example I can give you, suppose I do mantra japa. It helps me focus my mind. This Westerners call it mindfulness and all of these things, right? Okay, that's one benefit. But the other benefit is the apurva, which is the punya karma that I derive, and the siddhis, the shaktis, all that the upasaka gets basically as a consequence of doing mantra japa. So
Hmm.
that's Vedic. But the focus of the mind can be earned even scientifically. If you focus on your thesis, you can be focused there also, right? And that's where we spoke about this whole karate thing, if you remember, that
Yes.
martial arts and all. The reason that I do not call it a complete thing,
Hmm.
I don't know if it's worth bringing into this conversation. Maybe, maybe not.
No, it's fine. Continue.
Okay. So the
Means
reason,
getting examples is better.
right, right. So let's say we talk about martial arts. It teaches you
Hmm.
certain discipline. Yes.
Hmm.
It gives you a focused mind. Yes. It allows you to be more in control of your thoughts and your actions. Yes, definitely.
Hmm.
It brings rise to antakarana shuddhi. Yes. It
Hmm.
gives you chitta ekagrata. Yes. All of these benefits are there. They can also be earned through other means and other sadhanas also. It is true.
Hmm.
But then there's that purva is associated with it.
Hmm.
Say through Ishvara Pranidhanam and all of these other things, which are unique to the Vedas. That
Get
means that wherever there are overlaps, those things are not pramana. They can be split into either direction.
Hmm.
You can add it to the Vedas also, you can add it away into science also. But
Hmm.
that place where there are no overlaps, that is actually what you call pramana. Pramana
Right.
will not have overlaps. I'll give you another example. Suppose a bat is able to find prey through sonar,
Hmm.
right? Through the sonar detection. So what it's doing is it's sending a very shrill sound, and that
Hmm.
sound gets reflected back to it, and it is
Hmm.
able to pinpoint the prey. In
Hmm.
some sense, for somebody who has not studied bats, they may think the bats have very good eyesight, right? That could be a
Yes.
conclusion. But the bats have actually very bad eyesight.
Hmm.
They have great hearing. That's what it is.
Yes.
So when I was young, like I wanted to get a dog whistle,
Okay.
and dog whistle humans can't hear, but
Yes.
only dogs can hear. And when you do it, they'll get very excited. And I wanted to play pranks on these people that I would want to like blow the dog whistle, and then all the dogs will start barking and nobody will know why. So anyway, that's unrelated. But coming back to the bats, so,
Hmm.
in some sense, it is functioning as the eyes because the sound is giving you the shape of the object, right? That's what it
Right.
is. The shape
Right.
of the object determines where the bat is going to pounce.
Hmm.
Pounce the right word? No, maybe not. It's going to capture. Now, but it does not substitute the eyes because it still does not see the color.
Right.
And you can't even say it sees the form, it's sensing the form in some way. So this overlap cannot be considered a pramana
It's
kopa.
it's entirely different sense.
Hmm?
It's an entirely different sense organ, and it may be a pramana for a bat, but not for us.
Right, right. For snakes have these infrared detectors, the
Yes.
pits, right? So that's the pramana. But for us, like we have these pramanas and they don't overlap. And anywhere, if you perceive an overlap, it is called anuvada, and that can spill over into one or the other, but it is not a pramana as far as the
Okay.
Vedas go.
Okay. So So I'm I'm trying to again visualize it. So let's extend the those Venn diagrams into 3D.
Okay, nice. Now we are talking.
And you see, if these are Vedas, then science is overlapping, but not in the same plane, in some other plane. So that in this direction, what is happening is the interpretations.
Mhm.
For example, Argya and all those things lie in this plane, but its interpretation, added benefits
Right.
are getting interpreted in this direction, and then there is an overlapping with things.
I like that. I like that. Now, what I would call the third dimension that you added, the depth
Hmm.
dimension, that is the area of interpretative possibilities. It is the probability distribution of all possible interpretations and benefits you can derive from it. And
Hmm.
it could lie in any of the sheets across all of
Right.
these.
Right.
So it could be interpreted differently also, and the 3D distance will keep changing. So I like
Right.
that. I like that. And one of the things, not the scope of this discussion. Remember we spoke about one of the comments on your post that there are actually no absolute scientific facts. There are only approximations.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
everything that you even call a fact today is
Hmm.
only a working model. It is always
Hmm.
subject to further refinement, and we know through our even science itself says today that you can only come down to X amount of accuracy.
Right.
Whether you talk about the Heisenberg uncertainty principle or even in terms of the accuracy of measurement, uncertainty principle is actually not
Most of
even.
the things which we call today as pramana are in the same system.
Yes, they
They
are
are
working
just trying to
conclusions.
predict this as accurately as possible, but at the end they are simply trying to predict it. They are That's not a proof. That's a prediction to the most accuracy possible by the methods available.
But then you can't call it a prediction because prediction means that there is some past data point which is
It's not prediction. It's suggest a suitable word
it's
for
an
it.
approximation. It's an approximation.
Approximation.
Hmm.
Yes.
Because you only come close to it, but you never come to it. There's no it.
Yes.
And I think viewers may not know, but so I started writing something, a book.
Okay.
I'm only on chapter 1, but ultimately it is going to go into these topics as well,
Hmm.
about the accuracy of what we call proofs, and it's going to get into some sciencey stuff. It's going to get into some shastra stuff, and it's going to basically try to doodh ka doodh, pani ka pani, kya hai? What is what, and
Yes.
hopefully it will serve as a template for others to decide like how I can form accurate conclusions and how I don't need to split hairs over like which methodology to use.
Then
So that's going to be
again,
one.
right Tark and Kutark thing.
Right. It'll go into all of that.
Hmm.
Hopefully.
It will. It has to, because there's no other option.
Right. Now that you say it, I'll have to work a way around it. Yes. So okay. Now we come into this. Shraddha, you understand that. You understand, I
Yes.
know, but this is just for the rest as well. That's why I'm kind of. Uh, I'm looking for the common denominator basically, and so I might
Hmm.
address it in a certain way.
Hmm.
Um, Shraddha is trust pending understanding. Every single pramana requires Shraddha in order for you to operate the pramana.
Hmm.
Suppose when we speak about the Shabda pramana, you
Hmm.
expressing your feelings to me and me accepting them depends
Hmm.
upon the reliability of you as a person.
Hmm.
It does not mean that the pramana called Shabda pramana is defective. You could be defective or I could be defective. But
Yes.
the pramana is only a pramana if there's no defect involved. And okay,
Agree.
so this is the whole thing about Shraddha. And just as you need Shraddha in all the pramanas, you need it in the Vedas as well. Once you approach a pramana with Shraddha, it begins to reward you with benefits.
Hmm.
And once it begins to reward you, you don't need to have Shraddha in it anymore. Shraddha, the way I compare it is that let's say Shraddha is an elevator, it's a lift. You go, you reach to the roof, and then you get out. And Shraddha converts into knowledge. But without Shraddha, there is no knowledge.
Right.
Now we come into the territory of Andhavishwasa.
Hmm.
So many people will define Andhavishwasa. Sorry.
Just a second. This reminds me of another example.
Mhm.
For example, whenever someone goes to a counselor or someone similar, a guru, then I think the most important thing which is required is Shraddha. Because at that point of time, if a person is very, very sad, and next person is saying that don't worry, it will be all right in so and so months, or if you do something, it is going to be all right. That person doesn't have a proof that it is going to be all right. And if that person stays asking for a proof, then he is not going to reach anywhere. He will stay there. But if he believes, then a certain chance gets created that okay, now that he has started believing, this may or may not happen. Earlier, it was anyways not going to happen. So there's this strong reason why people from my generation should start stop obsessing about the proofs and start having shraddha on few things.
Yes. And what you said is a very, very wise example. Because there's a similar example my teacher says, which is, let's say, this whole thing about a person has not seen throughout his life. The person was born blind. And then the doctor comes up with a revolutionary new technology which allows the person to see. And so he performs an operation, he fixes the optic nerve, whatever issue that the person had. And then the person's eyes are bandaged after the operation. And so the doctor says, okay, I'm about to open the bandage. Let me know if you're able to see. Then that will confirm whether it worked or not, right? Only you can confirm it. But the patient is very stubborn. He says that, no, I will only open my eyes if you can guarantee that I'll be able to see. And the doctor says, but see, in order to guarantee that, you have to tell me that you can see. There's no way for me to assure you that. So same principle, that whether it's a counselor, whether it's a teacher, whether it's anybody, we assign them that benefit of the doubt, because only when you give them that benefit can you allow them to work through you and work upon you with an open mind. And then there is at least a 50% chance it might work. Maybe it doesn't. But as you very rightly put, it's 0% versus some percent. And you'd rather go with some percent. So very true. And so then we look into this Andhavishwas. So many people say, oh, Andhavishwas means something which has no proof, and that is Andhavishwas because you accept it. I mean, I believe that for some point when I used to be very hyper logical when I was like 17, 18, 19 years old. And then I started thinking more about it. It's not, there are many things which don't have proof, doesn't mean they are false.
Right.
Before you could see radio waves, before you could detect radio waves through receivers, it doesn't mean they didn't exist. It just means that you didn't have a way to pick them up. Today you can tune into a frequency, AM, FM, whatever, and some song will start blasting on the radio. So to say that absence of evidence equals evidence of absence is a very arrogant, and in today's day, it's a very arrogant Nastika conclusion that people have formed. So what exactly is Andhavishwas? Obviously, there is Andhavishwas, but we have to define it differently. And the way I define it is, I thought about this yesterday only.
Okay.
Andhavishwas is that accepting something which has no pramana. That is Andhavishwas. If there is no pramana, it's Andhavishwas. If a pramana contradicts it, it is 100% Andhavishwas. So suppose I say the sky is yellow at a given time and it is blue. That is Andhavishwas because it is contradicted by my Mula Pramana, which is Rupa.
Yes.
Same way, if somebody says karma does not exist, that is Andhavishwas. To say that it does not exist is Andhavishwas, not the other way around, because it goes against the Veda Pramana, Shruti Pramana. But now suppose somebody says, "Arey, this, the black cat crossed the street, take a few steps back." That is Andhavishwas because there is no pramana for it. Plus, it doesn't make logical sense also. Or if somebody says, "Don't walk under a ladder," now there could be some common sense involved there that a ladder could fall on you, so therefore people made that up. See, in my family, what it is, kechi hoti na. You don't give somebody scissors by with the sharp end, right? You will turn it ulta and then you give it to them. And so what was a safety practice became a superstition. Now Unnati, one of her friends, she's a Marwadi, her friend, and she went to her village for her marriage.
Hmm.
तो उनका पूरा वो village था, and small place very far away from any city, and so they had their haveli and all of that over there. So the marriage festive lasted like for several days. And so during those days, they had time to walk out and see the village and meet the village people. And it was a very fun experience for her, she was telling me. But then these village people started saying that, एक गली है वहाँ, उधर कभी जाने का नहीं, क्योंकि रात को वहाँ भूत आता है और वो लड़की को छेद देता है. तो क्या हुआ, maybe some incident would have happened, the light कम होगी. There's less light over there. So it is just a way of making people aware that stay safe. But then
Right.
that stay safe thing became a superstition with bhoot and all of that. So, we have to learn to analyze kya kya hai.
Right. For example, at my place, they say that you don't cut your nails at night. So this used to be very, very irritating for me when I used to be young, because you go to school in morning, you anything, something like that, and it's only evening time when you actually get free to do all these stupid things, cutting nails and whatever.
I just bite them.
No, you shouldn't do that.
I know.
So my father once said that my mother said that you shouldn't do that. So my father asked why, and then he told me that this used to be a now होते हैं ना to cut your nails.
Mhm.
कि now पुराने जमाने में आते थे and they used to cut nails from very sharp knives, and they have awesome kind of knives. I want those kind of knives. So those used to be very sharp knives, and in earlier times you didn't had lights of these kinds.
Mm.
They were all like small diya or anything like that, fire based light sources. So it was not safe to cut nails during nights, and so that continued, and we still don't cut nails at night, but now I do it. I
Now you
avoid
started
it, but
because
I
you have
still do.
lights.
So yes, those means many such things have continued in our traditions, and of course people from this generation are obsessed with proofs, and they keep asking for things, and since the elders are not able to explain it to them, they are again obsessed with calling everything as
So
individual.
isn't this a very beautiful approach, that instead of looking for proof, see what pramana it fits? Easy.
Exactly. Yes.
And if it doesn't fit a pramana, then doesn't mean that you completely reject it also. It only means that now you can accept it on a tentative basis that it could be wrong. And then you explore into it.
I feel that there's an issue here about the pramana thing. You can see it right there. If someone is saying कि अच्छा knife सीधा मत दो, उल्टा दो, कभी ना कभी हाथ कट जाएगा. You will see why knife सीधा मत दो.
Right.
It is quite like understandable.
Right.
But if someone says that you shouldn't go to temples during menstrual cycles, then you won't get the results instantly. And most probably, even if you are facing some results out of it, you won't be able to understand or perceive it.
Right.
You are sensing it, but you are not able to like bring it out.
Right.
You are not able to recognize it. So here, I think that there's an what do you say, gap in understanding, and here we need other kind of pramana, I think.
There is pramana for it. So it talks about there's pancha vayu. So you have pancha prana hote na, prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. So the prana is actually pointed upwards.
Right.
The apana is pointed downwards. When certain kriyas are performed, what happens is that the prana vayu, all the other pranas start getting pulled upwards. Okay. And they start moving. And so, you might have heard of something like Kundalini Shakti and this and that. And there are many other different forms of meditation also. But all of them, basically, what they are working on is the movement of prana from the lowest region to the Sahasrabda Chakra. So the Mooladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipurabja, Then you have the Hridaya Chakra, you have the Vishuddha Chakra, the Agnya Chakra, and the Sahasrara Chakra. So all of these pranas basically they start moving, they start coming together like a funnel. And then you have the left side, the Ida and the Pingala, and you have the different nadis and all. So there's a whole theory behind it. We can get into that whole session once. It will be very interesting to talk about pranas and all. But now, when a woman is in her menstrual cycle, the apana prana force becomes very dominant because it is pointed downwards and it comes out from beneath. And so the apana prana becomes very powerful. And in that Nabhi region, or in fact below the Nabhi region, in the Garbha region, the woman's, when she performs certain kriyas and all, the prana vayu starts pointing upwards. And so there is actually a stress that is created in that region which can be very unhealthy for her. Now, I can give you the example of one of my buas. So she is into all these sadhanas and all. Once what happened, no, she started, I don't want to get into the mantra and all specifically, but she started chanting one mantra. And it had a lot of heating element. Sharir mein itni garmi ho gayi that she felt like completely sick after that. And, it took her a long time to come out of it also. Because she was not supposed to do it at that time. And then there are other incidents also. Like I know one person who went to my guru. He was doing some sort of kriya, which basically he could not go to sleep for months after that. He developed insomnia because of it, because one of his chakras could not shut. Another person developed permanent backache. His spine would hurt all the time. After this call, I'll share something privately with you. Okay. It will get interesting, but after, I don't know if it's for live consumption, so sorry. But so there are many other pramanas. This is all a pramana because our Mahatmas, our Acharyas, our Siddha Granthas, the Hatha Yoga Pratipika, commentaries, all of these things talk about it. And that is why they give reasons for it. So it's not so much about do's and don'ts versus knowing what's good for you and what's bad for you.
Exactly.
That's what makes Sanatana Dharma so unique, that we don't have commandments, we have suggestions. And our suggestions are based on your good health.
I don't know if and relate this whole pramana thing to real life a lot. But again, I don't know if it is a pramana or not. But you see, more a person has been trying to deviate from whatever is being told to them, more I find that those people are either mentally disturbed or their health is not all right. And the more we are deviating from the natural schedule, the ideal schedule, which should be followed, the more we see rise in especially mental illnesses and hormone imbalance related issues. So a whole detailed study can be a pramana, and there can be more of it.
Yes.
But yes, people should infer something from that as well.
Right, definitely. And kya hai ki, as you very well know, nature abhors a vacuum. It doesn't. So when you start replacing your good practices, your good traditions, and you don't have anything better in place of them, you will substitute it for the worst.
Right.
So I've seen so many people's lives ruined just because like they get off schedule, for example, right? And whereas in our tradition, like every day kuch na kuch to karna hota. Your grandfather, great grandfather was a pujari, no? So imagine like how his schedule was. Like it was so disciplined and all of these things. And then somebody like us, like we keep up late at night, and then we get less sleep, and then you have to prepare for the next day and this and that. And it may be good for short-term success, but it's not good for long-term health. And
not at all means yes. My goal is always to be in a certain kind of schedule. Yes, from the past 2 and 3 years, I have not been able to manage it because of several reasons. But means it gets disturbed often. But most of the times I try to be in the schedule, and there's a joke na that there's a meme that parents के according सुबह जल्दी उठने से सारी problem solve हो जाती है. I agree to it. हो जाती है. Because I have been studying whole my life like in morning. सबसे अच्छी पढ़ाई सुबह होती है. And when you get up at 5 or 6, you have so much time left, and it's very productive. So problem solve हो जाती है.
That's
not a joke.
That is why our ग्रंथर्स से दैट सुबह का जो ध्यान होता है उसके जैसा कुछ होता नहीं, ब्रह्म मुहूर्त they call it. And so
100%.
and I've done like decent amount of sadhanas in my life, and I know that what you do in Brahma Muhurat compared to like 9 o'clock, आसमान जमीन का फर्क है. You can't compare also,
बहुत ज़्यादा.
and
You
it
know,
sticks
like
in your head.
I know this means मैं काफी छोटी थी उस time. Up to class 10th, I used to be very young. But still, I never studied more than 2 hours. Never. And 2 hours also, मतलब जब exams हैं तब 2 घंटे वो कभी होता होगा. 1 घंटा was enough. And even now I don't study more than, yes, work may take time, but the whole studying duration doesn't take more than 2 hours. Means now my schedule is not set, but it still doesn't take more than 2 or 3 hours per day. But I have seen people who wake up whole night, and I don't know what they do whole night, but they say that they keep studying. And I feel like it is not productive when you are doing that, because biologically that time is not for being productive. It makes your mind slow. So okay, this discussion is deviating a bit.
No, it's fine. So speaking of this whole discipline thing also, I started offering Argyum daily after you mentioned it, by the way, 3 months back. So thank you. So yeah, this is the topic of Andhavishwas, which is that just to tie it back together, analyze it from the process of Pramana. It makes life easier, and you have a set of axioms to go by.
Yeah.
And you're not relying on some stupidity or smartness of an individual to determine what is Andhavishwas and what isn't. You have a clear set of parameters, Pramanas, that's it. And so today we basically looked into the whole topic of Pramana. The person who accepts Pramanas, who understands how to use them, is a mature person, basically, because you have a certain way of approaching life and you know how to make sense of things. And that confusion element comes down. And then the person who accepts, okay, that there's a Shraddha required also, it introduces the sense of humility. Because usually we only do adhyasa of Shraddha when it comes to Veda Granthas. But today we see that, okay, Shraddha is required for many things. Whether you speak to a counselor, whether you speak to your father or your mother, if you doubt every single thing that they are saying, it's your problem. It's not their problem.
Right.
And finally, we talked about this Andhavishwas and how we can reduce it. So maybe we can go into more details on that in a later time. But I think this is good for now. What do you say?
I think it's done, and I also think that yes, we need more episodes which are connected, like Tark and Kutark, as I already said. Then it will obviously go into the critical thinking thing, and then one important episode should be about how the people perceive all these things and how to solve it. Maybe through some kind of implementations and modification in education system or something like that. But this needs to be worked upon in real ground.
Yes.
So that's required.
And we need something on urban science and engineering. So I'm waiting for that. So as part of you should close also today.
Okay, so means that's it. I have said everything in the last three or four parts of the statements that we will dive into these following topics.
Okay.
That's it.
Good. So I'll just close off with a Shanti mantra. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnaat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti Hari Om Shri Guru Namaha Hari Om.